Morning, everyone. Welcome to our Namaste experience on Thursday. This is going to be an interesting one. Just when you think you got it all figured out, just when you think you know what you're going to talk about, something comes along that challenges it all and sets the ship moving in a new direction, a good direction. Well, that's what happened this morning at breakfast. I thought I knew what we were going to talk about and share, and then our conversation started to guide things in a new, very interesting direction. But at the same time, it must begin in a very particular place of surrender, of letting go, of relaxing. And so I'm going to begin our session with something that you've heard before, but I think this is the key to revelation, to any new revelation that would dawn upon our minds and shake us free from all of the limiting beliefs and concepts that we've held till now. This is what's most important. Oh my gosh, is today's lesson, the peace of God is shining in me now? Yes. That's so funny. Lesson 188. Well, this is from lesson 189, right after that. But we'll sing the peace of God at the end of the session today. But this is from lesson 189 in the course. Simply do this. Don't you love when it starts off like that? It's just saying, okay, let's put all that aside for a moment and just do this. To see if you can do this one simple thing. Be still. And lay aside all of your thoughts about who you are, of what God is, all concepts you have learned about the world, all images you hold about yourself. Empty your mind of everything it thinks is either true or false, or good or bad, of every thought it judges worthy, and all of the ideas of which it is ashamed. Just let them all go. Hold on to nothing. Do not bring with you one thought the past has taught. Not one. That's hard to do, but that's what we're being asked to do. Don't bring one thought from the past, nor one belief that you ever learned about anything. Forget this world, forget this course, and come with holy, empty hands unto God. Surrender, let go, release. These are the key words. This is what leads to the transformative experience. But we have to begin by realizing that all of the thoughts, all of the ideas, all of the judgments, everything that I've held until now have not helped me. Sometimes they may think they do, but I always find myself back in the same place. I always find myself dealing with the same issues, the same addictions, whatever they may be. All of those things that I cling to, I hold on to, I possess, have never given me what I really want. And yet so many of us are coming to a place in our physical lives where we're so drawn to a minimal existence. Certainly those of us who live at Namaste, we come here from wherever we come in the world, and we have to let go of so much before we even arrive. We have to go through, how many of you had to go through your house and probably get a dumpster and just, you have to look through all the stuff that you've been accumulating over decades and say, I haven't looked at this in 12 years, going to the dumpster. So either going into the yard for people to take and just have, or it's going into I filled a whole dumpster when I sold my house 1.5 years ago. Stuff that I don't need. I didn't need it even in the beginning. So now we come to a place where we're just free of being encumbered with all this stuff. And now, because it begins with the physical desire to do that, now we're beginning to do that with our thoughts, our attachments. We're looking clearly at all the shadowy things that we thought we had to do battle with, and realize now that they're just shadows. There's nothing that we really need to do with them at all. Just let them go. In fact, before our breakfast conversation, I had picked up a Joel Goldsmith. Oops, sorry. I picked up a Joel Goldsmith book, and I picked one section to read because it's all about shadows and how a shadow is just a shadow. You don't need to do anything with the shadow. You can just disregard it. Let me read you what Joel says, and this will lead us into what we're going to have for our discussion. Let us assume that there is a shadow on the wall. As we look at it, we can see that it is a shadow. And of course, we do not hate it or fear it or love it. If I thought that the shadow was some kind of an evil presence, I might very well hate it or fear it. And if I thought that it was a person, I might love it. Knowing it as a shadow, however, I can neither hate nor fear nor love. I look upon it with complete indifference, knowing that its only existence is as a shadow. I look upon it with complete indifference. This is the key. Knowing that it is only a shadow, virtually nothingness without substance. Every attachment I've ever had is being attached to a shadow, but I can only come to realize that when I see through it. Until then, I think that these are real important things. So this morning, I was having a conversation with Calico, and she began to tell me about something that she has held very dear, a judgment that has been very important to her whole life. And then she discovered something that has allowed her to release and to just let go and to surrender. So I'm going to turn it over to Calico now, and she can explain to you how that happened, and something very interesting that I'd heard of, but I didn't know much about. And it's just one example of how when we release and let go of our judgments, everything changes. So Calico, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, James. It was a great conversation. It was the first time I'd really spoken about it, and it's been really rolling around in my head a lot these days. And not even sure. Okay, all I ask is that you just take this on as a possibility. Try not to make it right or wrong, because then you're moving into judgment. There was a program I was watching, and it was, I mean, it was a very odd program, all I can say. And it started off with really seeing how COVID has changed the way that we eat. And David Chang, who used to be a chef, I consider him a funny philosopher, and I have always loved him. And so that's why I was drawn to this program in the first place. And while watching this program, they came up at this one point of, right now, this is real time, this is not science fiction. What they're doing in labs across the world, they have come to find that they can take one cell. And the example that they had during this program was they took one cell from a chicken breast and made a completely new chicken breast in a lab, one cell. And David, who's a chef, he was like, this can't be. And he cut it up and he looked at it and he smelled it and then he tasted it and he said, tastes like chicken. And they're doing this with everything. It's not just chicken breast, beef, black beans, they're doing it with everything. And this, my particular script has gotten me a lot. It was very involved in stem cells at one time. And stem cells are basically undifferentiated cells. So if those cells are injected into an area that has wounded cells, it builds new, fresh, original, whatever it is, ligaments, muscles, whatever. So now they've got it down to they can take one cell from a steak and make another steak. And they're talking about this because basically realistically, our planet has gone way beyond feeding its population in the ways that it has done it in the past, with factory farms and all of this, that's just, it no longer is working. And so one of my beliefs, throughout my career was, I called it the evil empire called Monsanto. And they did a lot of GMO stuff. And oh my God, I could go on rants about GMOs and Monsanto. And the reality is I'm watching this program, I cleared that belief. It just disappeared because I'm thinking, this is fabulous. I mean, one steak, the cells in one steak could feed 30,000 people. A whole cow could feed 1 million. And you start playing, and this is real time. This is what they're doing right now. This is not la la. So, and then it went to the breakfast was fascinating this morning. Someone mentioned, well, we could just start replicating Jesus, which is totally doable. They've got some DNA somewhere. They could drop that DNA and replicate Jesus. The problem being, and this is what we're all being challenged to do in our minds, you would just get a body. The mind can't be replicated or duplicated. The mind is free to choose whatever it's going to think. So really, if you were able to duplicate Jesus, and they can't, but if they could, they would just get a human body like any of us. But the mind is where the miracles happen. And so, I say this because it opens up this whole world of possibility of the way we have thought about our lives and the way in which it's moving. And, we can fight it all we want. And believe me, I fought Monsanto. They GMO'd all our green chili crop in New Mexico. I was an angry, angry person. And the reality is, isn't that wonderful? Now we can have green chili for everybody, not just for those in New Mexico. And all it takes is one cell, just like we're one mind. And all it takes is one mind to waken up, and you can create a whole world of awakened beings. But it takes us challenging those belief systems of, oh, that's not good. Oh, no, I'd never eat that. And then you take, this is where I go every day. And then it challenges this whole idea of whether to be a vegan or a meat eater. Who cares? Does it matter? They can take one cell from a black bean and make all the black beans for the entire planet. They can take one cell from one steak and provide meat for everybody in the United States or Canada or wherever. It's like, we've got to keep our minds open to the possibility that not all these things are wrong. And GMOs, stem cells started with the whole technology of GMOs. So it's like, who am I to say that's wrong? It's taking us to a new level. And maybe it is a better level because it will be able to feed the entire planet in a way which whatever one wants. I keep thinking, because I had livestock and I thought, God, I could grow one cow in my backyard, loving it, feeding it, massaging it, doing all the things I used to do to my cattle and provide meat for the entire planet. It's just something to think about, because this is what we're doing here through A Course in Miracles, for sure. It's like we have got to challenge every idea that we have ever held on to as this is right, that is wrong. I know what's best. And I'm now moving into an area, I'm calling it toxic individuality. We have toxic individuality. My way is the right way. I'm thinking about this the right way. GMOs are wrong. Monsanto should be done away with. We should kill them all. It's like, that's not love. That's me making a judgment. And I've got to challenge each and every one of those. And it is tough, but once you start doing this, it keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I mean, I always thought, being silent, I always thought silence is boring. No, silence is, once you start clearing your mind out of all your beliefs, I hold this is true, I hold this is right, that's wrong. Once you start getting rid of all those, you get to this expanded awareness of A, anything is possible, and B, all of it's perfect.
Mm.
And that's where we're going with this. That's what it means to be awakened. I mean, it's normal people taking on their belief systems and seeing them differently. And that's what I mean. Toxic individuality is like seeing every damn thing I think differently.
Yeah. Toxic individuality is the need to be right.
Yeah.
Which, as we've said, is the true pandemic. That's what's rocking the world right now. Everybody wants to be right. In other words, I want to assert my rightness, my individuality, to solidify who I think I am. And this brings us right back to what Joel was saying when he wrote, I look on it all with complete indifference. I'm not going to hold on to anything, knowing that all of it's only a shadow, its only existence is a shadow. All of my beliefs, all of my ideas are just shadows with no meaning at all unless I give it meaning. But I can change the way I see anything. That's why I started off with that beautiful prayer. Simply do this. Let go of all of those ideas. They're not serving you in the way that you think they are. Your example with Monsanto, being on the high horse, this is wrong. Wouldn't it be interesting if the thing that you thought was wrong is what solved the hunger for the famine possibility of the whole planet? Wouldn't that be interesting? So this is why we're called to come with wholly empty hands. Let go of it all, challenge it all. And also everything that you're talking about with the one cell, I think it's so interesting because it brings us right back to the Christ, to Jesus, if you want to look at Jesus in that way. It took one person to break through, to prove that there is no death. It took one person to become fully illumined. He was the one cell, that one chicken cell that can now feed the whole planet. And isn't this exactly what he did with the miracle of the loaves and fishes? There were a few loaves of bread. There were a few fish. There were 5,000 people. Actually, it says there were 5,000 men. So maybe there were a lot more than 5,000 people. I don't know why they didn't count women and children at that time, but albeit. But imagine that just a few little loaves of bread and a few fish were able to feed the whole assembly. Just as the awakening of one can awaken the whole as it replicates and includes and allows. I just think this was so brilliant, and I was so grateful when you shared it this morning. Anything else you want to add to that, Calico?
No, I just, your final statement was exactly it. It's like, if I can just take on whatever I find in my belief system as right or wrong, and just see it differently. I mean, that's what Bebot for me was all about. It's a technology to take you from firmly believing something to seeing it differently. And if we can see everything differently through the eyes of love, period, no exceptions, nothing, then this can just take over. I mean, very quickly. I mean, it's like I said, they're doing this in a lab right now. It's not like this is like some science fiction thing that we're talking about here. And I say the same thing is true of our minds and seeing all through love. This is not sci-fi. This is not something that's going to happen in the future. It happens right now. Right now. Take on whatever you're holding in your mind right now, where you want to see, you want it to be perhaps differently than what it is, and see it through the eyes of the Christ, eyes of love. That is the way that the world disappears into a speck of love. So thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to share that.
I'm looking forward to the day when there's a restaurant and everyone is going to be ordering a steak, and they serve everyone their steaks, and then the film crew comes out and lets them all know that you weren't actually eating a steak. And I mean, you were, but you weren't. That was grown in a lab. I can't wait to see the looks on their faces, because for many of them, until they find that out, they're going to be loving that steak. They're going to be thinking this is the juiciest, most wonderfully well-cooked steak they've ever had. And watch it switch when the idea comes. No, it was something else. It was something different. But
and that's when all the judgments come up, you know? They loved it. And this actually, yeah, until, there was a guy in Malibu Burgers, big black guy, beautiful human being. He looks like, barbecue master. And he serves Malibu Burgers. He serves these burgers. And at some point it got out that they're all vegetarian. And he had people coming back to him going, angry at him. Why don't you say that it's not meat? And he said, all he says to them is, did you love it? And they'd say yes. And he would just smile.
Yeah. That's why it all comes down to just challenging our beliefs, challenging our judgments, coming with wholly empty hands unto God, with no judgments, with no beliefs, completely open. That's why that prayer begins with those words, simply do this. He's saying to us, this is all you need to do. Just come with wholly empty hands unto God. And I'll show you things you can't even begin to imagine. I'll show you how you can take one cell from a chicken breast and turn it into another chicken breast and another, and feed the whole planet from that one cell. I'll show you how one being who is fully awake, who realizes the Christ within them, can become so infectious and so exciting to the whole planet that it turns everything around. That's where we are right now. And even the lesson today, the peace of God is shining in me now. This is happening right now. Just like Calico was saying, this is not science fiction 10, 20 years from now. It's happening right now. And so is the peace of God that's shining in you right now. All you need to do is to take off the armor that has blocked it from being released. The armor is all of the judgments, all of the ideas, all of the things that we have held on to try and justify our identity, to justify who we think we are, as opposed to who God knows us to be, the innocent, holy, perfect child that God knows us to be. So it's time to take off the armor. It's time to lay down the sword of our judgments and all of our ideas and come with holy, empty hands.
Amen.
How beautiful. So I didn't check, but if Reverend, I saw Leslie has your hand up. Leslie, why don't you go ahead? And then if Stephen, if you're out there, I'd love to hear what you think about all this.
Thank you. Something Calico said about, I had a dream. And in the dream, there was a row of weeds and I needed to pull them. And the first one was kind of tough to pull. But then I noticed that the first one was connected to the second one and the third one. And as I pulled it up, it got easier and easier. So I just wanted to share that.
Yeah. All it takes is one. All it takes is one. Wow. That is a high lesson right there. So Stephen, are you out there?
Yes, yes, I am, James. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, so many good lessons today. Boy, I just don't know what to expect whenever we show up here, right? And that's the way it should be.
The idea.
And and Calico, you had me earlier in the week with your cat story, so I just love that one, and it continues. It's a good practice, really. Some of the lessons, just a quick review here for me, is to examine those beliefs. And I wrote a little bit about that this week, to examine the beliefs that we have. Where did they come from? Why do I believe what I do? Who did I get this from? Was it from grandma? Was it from my mother, my father? Did I just wake up one day and believe what I believe? We have this programming, this input, and I spoke about that a little bit earlier this week. But then we take that further and we look at the message today, come with wholly empty hands. Can we look, what are we holding? What are we holding on to with those hands? If our intention is to come with wholly empty hands, what's in them now that we need to release? Are we holding on to the door that's trying to close, that needs to close, so we can have those wholly empty hands to open the door that's in front of us, that's next, that's calling us to go through? Are we holding on to any unforgiveness, to any animosity, to bruises that the egos may have? Are we holding on to the rear view mirror, always looking backwards and seeing what's back there rather than paying attention to what's in front of us, which, that can cause some accidents too. And then let me wrap this up with another lesson found in just the story that Calico shared. If we can do this, and we're seeing science do this and proving things for us, what can we do with a cell of light, with a cell of love, which a cell of beingness? Now think about that light. How could we illumine the world? And we would do that not to be brighter. In fact, in some writing I just gave James to look at this morning, I say there's a place and a time that we go supernova in consciousness. And we shine our light and live from our light to show that, to model and demonstrate that, not because others have no light, but to show them that the light in us is also in them. So if we take that same story around science and what they're doing with one cell, how about shining that light when we don't really think it would make any difference? How about being that love when, well, what difference will it make? How about we be that? How about we do that and be that one cell of light that could maybe encourage somebody else to go supernova and illumine the world in that way, that ray of peace, that ray of light, that ray of love, and on and on and on it can go. We can expand on that. Thanks for letting me share. Great shares today, Calico, James, and everyone else, and Leslie too. Thank you. God bless you.
Yes. Thank you, Stephen. It's exciting to see how even science is reflecting this awakening and teaching us the lessons that we need to learn, to let go of all of our judgments and all of our ideas and to examine them so that we can be clear. And well, it came from here, and that doesn't apply to now. The only thing that applies to right now is right now. It's like a story that I heard about this woman who would always, she had a ham, and she'd cook the ham for her family, and she'd cut off this side and she'd cut off this side. So now you only have, and she would cook it. And her young daughter says, "Mommy, why do you do that? Why do you waste, both sides?" Some of you are not in your head because you've heard this story. She said, "Well, I don't know, because this is just how my mom taught me. So let's go talk to your grandmother." And so they go to her mother's house. She lives right up the street, and she says, "Mom, my Penny, I'll call her Penny, is wondering, why did you teach me to cut off this side and that side before I cook the ham?" She said, "Well, I don't really know. It's just what my mom taught me." And well, grandma's, in an assisted living place up the road. Let's go talk to her and find out why she did it. Why did she teach you? And on and on. And so they go to grandma's apartment and they ask, Grandma, what you've taught all of us to cut off both sides. Why did you do that? She said, well, because we only had a pan that was big. What applied then does not necessarily apply now. All of the prejudices, all of the concepts and judgments we have do not apply to right now. The only thing that applies to right now is the realization. Here we go. You knew I'd wrap this in somehow. The realization that the peace of God is shining in me now. This moment, not in the distance, but right now. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to celebrate that fact by singing that lesson. You all know it. We do it a lot. So let's sing together. You ready? The peace of God is shining in me now. The peace of God is shining in me now. The peace of God is shining in me now. The peace of God is shining in me now. The peace of God is shining in me now. The peace of God is shining in me now. The peace of God is shining in me now. The peace of God is shining in me now. So let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Amen, 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 y punto. Thank you, everyone. Calico, Stephen, everyone. Leslie, it was lovely to hear from you. This was a good lesson. So now let's go out and be that single cell. Let's be that. Namaste.
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 I think Vicky's back
Thank
tomorrow.
you. I love you.
Send love to Putin.
Bye-bye
Send
for
love to
now.
I
Putin.
love you. I love you.